Greetings, YouTube. I finally got around to watching the film Prometheus, the prequel to Aliens, and mostly because I had watched the clip about Alien Covenant, and before I made a comment about Alien Covenant, I really wanted to watch Prometheus first, so I had a kind of a good mental model of what the casts looked like in both films. And the clip of Alien Covenant, which I hope we remember, I'll put the link below. Um, Gives you a good idea what the whole cast looks like. And having seen Prometheus, I can now make comments about that as well. Oh, and by the way, Prometheus was very pretty, but wasn't very smart. And I can't really say I think that the universe needs a prequel um, to Alien, and I actually don't have much interest in Alien Covenant because I watched the trailer and it looks a lot like an '80s slasher film. Just not something I'm interested in. But one thing that stood out just is screamingly obvious to me is that this universe, like a lot of science fiction, is very, very white. And I'm mystified by this. Because in Prometheus, this is how it's 17-person crew, 2 of which are people of color. And in Alien Covenant, I'm not sure exactly how many people are on the crew, but also it looks like there's 2 people of color. That the crews are not reflecting the ethnic diversity of America in 2017, let alone America in 2080s or 2090s. And why is the crew so American? I imagine that Wayland is an international institution, that it's essentially a Zabatsu covering every single piece of territory it can lay its hands on. And yet the crew looks like it came from Iowa. I'm mystified about this, other than the fact that they're aiming to make the film as approachable as possible to the American audience, which is predominantly white at the moment. And it just never occurs to casting directors and writers and producers that they're making an almost essentially white film. It's just unbelievable to me in this day and age. Now, Star Wars, again, that's another example of a very white cast. And you might say, oh, well, the original was made, back in, a time when things were a little less diverse. They didn't have to be. Star Trek had more diversity, and that was made far earlier than that. And Star Trek's main cast actually is pretty decent on the diversity scale. You have a black woman, you have an Asian man, and you have a biracial alien human. And out of the main cast, which is like 7 characters, that's not bad. That's a fairly decent level of diversity, though. Like Star Wars, there aren't nearly enough aliens in the Star Trek universe, in my opinion. It is far too human centric. I think you need to get some diversity in there. Humans are not the dominant species of the entire universe, and if they are the dominant species in the Federation has a problem. The Federation needs greater levels of diversity, and we, the audience, should have more diversity in our casts, whether they're human or non-human. Now, in the Alien universe, the only aliens you've encountered are things that you really don't want to have around, like the engineers who are trying to kill us, or they're essentially their creation, the aliens that really also want to kill us. Though the mythology of Prometheus makes little sense to me. I'll probably do a review about that at some point. There are many gaping holes in the Alien universe, like they're faster than light drives, which are not quite fast enough to not require an entire crew to go into cryo sleep. But yeah, whatever. Fassbender looked good though. He's a striking man. So, why do American audiences tolerate this whitewashed science fiction universes that we are presented with so often? Why aren't more science fictions, say, for example, the crew of a ship is a Chinese-Kenyan joint effort? So the entire crew is Chinese and Kenyan. with like one white person. And screw the, well, we need white people so that the audience can identify with the characters. People of color have been required to identify with white people for 100 years in film. Don't even bat an eye about that. Women have been required to identify with male characters because there wasn't any other option, really. And yet no one seemed to think anything about that, because that's an example of white privilege and male privilege right there. That you are the default. That white men are the default hero of these stories. Now it's a little better now for, like, in Prometheus. We have a white hero, albeit an android, and who has some dubious agenda of his own, and a white woman. So at the end of the film, we do have, it's the kind of the classic one guy and one woman survive, and they happen to both be white, even though one of the characters is not actually human. The actors themselves are. I'm tired of it. I want more diversity, and I don't think that's asking a lot. I want films to reflect the diversity that we have now, let alone what's it going to look like in 70 or 80 years when America is a majority minority culture. Why are filmmakers pandering to white culture so much? I don't get it. They may not have noticed this back in the 60s or even in the 80s, but now we do, and yet they're still doing it. Films that have majority ethnic casts are seen as novelties, or they get the fanboys up in arms, screaming and raving when there's a black character or an Hispanic character or a woman who's a main character. It happens constantly. Stop pandering to white fanboys. Start letting the audience see themselves on the screen. And that isn't asking much, in my opinion. Having a film reflect our reality. That's a really low bar.